Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The session is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the last day of the Atlantic Dialogues Conference. Please take your seats. The session America First Negotiation Room for Others will now begin. For translation, you may use the headsets available in the auditorium, or you may scan the QR code to listen through your personal headphones. Channel 1 is for English, Channel 2 is for French, Channel 3 is for Arabic, and Channel 4 is for Spanish. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our moderator for this session, Kimberly Dozier, Global Affairs Analyst at the CNN.
Thank you, everyone. It is an honor to be here on the third day, and thank you for coming. I know that there was a Moroccan dinner last night and late festivities, so love the turnout. We are going to be talking about America First, and I understand that's already been on everyone's minds here. So I would like to introduce my panelists first. We have Guinea's former Prime Minister, Mohamed Bea Vogui. And next we have Colombia's Ambassador, Carmen Jaramillo. And then we have former U.S. Ambassador to Morocco, Panit Talwar. And as we get settled, I'd love to introduce a video. Give us a preview of what we're talking about.
Produced as a simple campaign slogan, America First soon became a new way of doing politics. By putting national interest above all, it transformed America's relationships with its partners and redrew the lines of global cooperation. Its impacts went far beyond Washington's borders, influencing everything from migration and climate negotiations to the way nations handle technology and artificial intelligence. For many countries, it marked a turning point, prompting them to reconsider their relationship with the United States and their place in today's shifting global landscape. How has the America First policy reshaped traditional U.S. alliances and global partnerships? How has it influenced global perceptions of U.S. leadership and credibility? How have nations leveraged these disruptions to carve out new negotiation spaces and influence global agendas?
And with that, I would also like to ask you to pick up your phones and vote. I have a question to all of my panelists, but I would like you to answer it first. And it is a vote. Is the U.S. under the Trump administration a reliable ally? So, as the audience votes, I think I will turn first to our former Prime Minister. Sir.
Well, I think whatever we say, America is still a very, very important player in this world. And certainly everyone wants to have good relationship with America. But with the evolving situation, I look at this from my southern shores. And people get a little bit confused at this stage. The country that used to function on rule-based, predictable relationship is now bringing a lot of surprises. And the shockwave that are coming from US are getting to the villages in Africa, getting into the budgets, getting into the economy, getting into the trade. So, and that, unfortunately, is done such a way that is not predictable. So therefore, today, America is certainly a very important partner, but it's giving some challenges with predictability.
Giving some challenges. You were the Prime Minister, but you could be a diplomat. That's a very understated way to say it. Now we see the audience has voted, and something like 77% say no. We have some not sure, and some brave souls at 12% or so saying yes. Ambassador Jamil, I would like you to speak next, but I just want to ask everyone in the audience. The ambassador will be speaking in Spanish, so...
I'm going to try my best to speak in English.
Okay, all right. It's intervention at the moment.
Yeah. As the Prime Minister said, United States is a key place for all of us. It has been a partner for everyone. We have been dealing with them, like Colombia, for many, many decades. But the fact that he decided to do and to apply this American First has created a big problem around the world. Why? Because he is withdrawing from the main organization in the world. Secondly, because he's obliging the older allies, because he decided to think about America. But United States was a leadership around the world. What happened now is the place that United States is living is getting by other countries. But it was good because the countries decide that they have to do much more than they were doing before. They decide to work as another regions. Mercosur and European Union has been moving after the United States decide to leave all the organization abroad. So what I find is, even though if United States is very important for all of us around the world, the other countries are getting the place where the United States is living. So we need to have, it has been the leadership around the world, but now it's getting not. It's getting outside. When he's going to come back, it's going to be that the other area, the other regions, and the other countries that they are not necessarily their friend are taking the place.
So you're saying, as the U.S. abandons various fields of influence, other countries, by necessity, are having to step into the gap. But once this space is filled and they have claimed ownership, independence, leadership, the U.S. will be left out in the future.
I don't know if left out, because the United States has been very important, but it's going to be very difficult to get back at the place he was before, because the region has been learning, because Europe now realize they have to do by themselves, because Latin America is creating agreements in between in order for them to survive. Because as the Prime Minister say, from one day to another, everything changed.
Yeah.
We cannot allow them now, because the global war is moving, even or without the United States.
So, Ambassador Tawar, some might say, we know what you're going to say. You served in the Obama administration, the Biden administration. You watched what happened as the first Trump administration ended with chaos on Capitol Hill. Do you think the U.S. is a reliable ally?
So you have two key words in that, reliable and ally. I'll handle them separately. Ally, I would say it depends on who you are. If you are one of the Gulf countries, if you are Prime Minister Orban, if you are President Milei, if you are in a right-wing populist party in Europe, if you're here in Morocco, you would probably say yes. If you are a traditional ally in Europe, if you are Canada, if you are India, you might say something very different. That's the ally part. The reliable part, I'll tell you from my experience, having been an ambassador here, having been on the front lines of some of the competition that we've seen around the world, particularly with China. Work I did previously as an Assistant Secretary of State, where my responsibility was to negotiate security agreements with countries around the world, provide defensive equipment. One of my strongest selling points, one of the differentiators that I had with me, was to be able to say, to come to countries, sign the security agreement, buy this piece of equipment from us, come with us, because you will be not just getting this, what you're buying immediately, you're buying into a long-term relationship with the United States. You get the full faith and credit of the United States, and we will be with you even when the chips are down. To me, that's reliability.
And yet, we've seen two administrations carry out major actions that the world has interpreted as betrayal. In the Trump administration, we had things like the cessation of USAID, which I want to get to next, but we also had the Biden administration withdrawing from Afghanistan and the continued stories of Afghans who worked with Americans, not able to get out, being assassinated, being hunted down to this day. How does that dent, having two in a row, how does that dent the U.S. reputation?
Well, I think they're very different. Of course, the withdrawal from Afghanistan was pursuant to an agreement that had been negotiated, which was very controversial at the time. It certainly didn't help the way that was carried out and the after effects. And we've had this challenge throughout our history. We're not perfect. We had it in Vietnam afterwards, after Bay of Pigs. There are a number of things, historical events you can go through. But by and large, I still think, as the Prime Minister said, that the United States and the Ambassador, that the United States is an important country. People rely on us, and generally we have been seen as reliable.
And yet, some might say, rather than reliable, we are a necessary evil. So I turn to you in terms of, you said many people in Africa have woken up to the shock of America First. Surely many must have felt it through the cessation of USAID programs. Yeah. What kind of impact did it have?
Well, I think several countries, given the economic and socio-economic context in Africa, were relying on USAID in many areas, particularly in health and education, key aspect of the national, I will say, development. And particularly those countries that were affected by Ebola or affected by AIDS. You had these long-term programs that were set and were supporting, particularly in Southern Africa. And suddenly, overnight, these went away. And people were not ready, budget-wise, not ready planning-wise, because these programs were signed for several years. There was a kind of, really trusting that this is no more a burden, our resources are somewhere else. And suddenly they have to revisit all that in a precipitation, and also all the expertise and assistance, and all disappeared. And really it had a very, very big impact. And leave alone, the quantity of experts and the money that was injected, it was billions of dollars, and suddenly it all disappeared. So, of course, people start asking questions. If it is like this time, what about next time? So, but it did something good, and people started thinking on self-reliability, saying, okay, America First doesn't mean that we are alone. We should start thinking about self, and we should start thinking about maybe other type of relationship. So, and this is really the status of the affairs. But most importantly, the African intellectuals are thinking differently, are saying, listen, guys, this is a lesson. It's time for us to have the right institutions and the right policies, not only at national level, but at continental level. It's extremely important. Because in front, what do we have? Is United States, a group of states. If I can, we have European Union, a group of states. But in Africa, we are fragmented. So this risk of, the future is that let's finish with fragmentation. Let's build the institution. A good African CDC for health. A good system of banking, a central bank. African trade, intra-trade, African, intra-trade development and so on. So now the thinking is going very fast. I don't know if some of you were in the meeting in Washington from the Exim Bank, and so the thinking is really moving very fast. It has ignited a dynamic.
So a bit as Ambassador Jamil was describing, when the U.S. disappears, Africa tries to step up, fill in the blanks for itself, which sounds very healthy. It sounds like also a positive step away from the post-colonial era,
Exactly.
the big brother or patriarchal relying on the U.S. to provide. But it also means there's a space left. And I know that to a certain extent Russia, but especially China, had already been working very hard to fill the spaces as part of its One Belt, One Road program. So has China increased its activity from what you can see?
But I think if you look at the figures, I was seeing some figures, maybe you have to check a little bit. I think the volume of trade between last year and the end of this year, almost year, has really grown between China and Africa. So that's a reality, is a fact since then. And then, in desperation, people try to find immediate solutions and planning in the future. But I think one shouldn't look at that too much as something. I think Africans are starting to thinking by themselves. They're starting now to look at regional solutions. Not even sometimes not global. So sometimes I say around the project, you can build very good things at regional level. You have seen now the initiative of the King that is, this gas and infrastructure. So I think a lot of initiatives like that are mushrooming slowly. If we cannot have global solution, can we have regional or sub-regional solution that solves our problems? Sometimes it's much easier to build concrete, I will say, impactful solutions through specific projects. And that's what we see now.
And now that you don't have the sort of U.S. aid to sort of catch you if you fall, it's got to work the first time.
It has to.
Yeah.
There's no other way. In my place, they say, if they push you up to the wall and your back is at the wall, there is nowhere you go. You have to respond.
So that is the African continent.
Yes.
Ambassador Jamil, your
Quite
thoughts?
similar. Latin America has been, as China has been present in Africa for so many years now, and it was present in some countries in Latin America. But now you can see much more, even in my country. For us, United States is very important because it has been the ally for decades and decades. But United States is moving back. Is thinking in American first. So what is the gap? The gap is the Chinese are coming. And people does not hate. They like because they come with the planning, they come with the projects, they come with the money. What are going to be the results later on? It has to be seen, because if you see Ecuador, and if you see Peru, and you see Argentina before, now Argentina is changing back. Brazil, who has been having, now is Colombia, they are planning to build the roads, to build the buildings. So whatever is the point is, China is covering the gap that United States is leaving behind. The American first could be very interesting policy for United States inside, but United States has been a leadership all around the world. Now he's withdrawing from all the many organizations. So now we have to have the other countries. That is true. And when you talk about economics, not culture, because it's another thing. And China is still very far. They are moving. But when they move with everything. Money, platforms, people. So United States is not the case.
The kind of long-term planning that organizations like USAID and certain UN organizations, when they were better funded, are able to do, that has now disappeared, and we're only in the first year. But I want to ask a follow-on about the threatened military action against Venezuela. Now, when you ask many in the Latino community inside the United States, what do they think of Trump? They do not like the rounding up by ICE of anyone who looks like they might not be from Europe, essentially. And we have this massive military buildup off of Venezuela's coast. We have a questionable targeting of fishing vessels, which are allegedly drug vessels, that if you listen to me on CNN, on with other military analysts, et cetera, seems to go against both U.S. law and the laws of war. How is Latin America seeing this threatened military coup, this potential overturning of the Maduro regime?
Let me tell you, I always say we talk too much and we do too little.
We, Latin America?
Yeah, in general,
Okay.
in general around the world. The decision of the administration, Trump administration, is considering because the target is the narco-terrorists. How many people are going to be inside? I don't know. Colombia, the government of Colombia is standing behind whatever is happening, the government in Venezuela. If you ask the Colombians, we are very worried what is going to happen, because whatever is happening in Venezuela, we are going to have hundreds and hundreds of people from Venezuela going to Colombia because it's the only borderline. So, but what another decision could be if the government is still there? What is going to do? Mr. Trump is putting all the chips and all the names and all, but is he going to do something real very soon?
We don't know.
No one knows, even in the audience.
Yeah, no, and some might say no one knows in the White House either, but that varies from day to day. Turning to another conflict, Ukraine, we see Trump administration officials. There are a few different camps. We have the Marco Rubio camp, the traditionalists, who are anti-Russia and take seriously Europe's fears and Russia's threats of some sort of military action against the larger Europe if they succeed in Ukraine. And we see the negotiators like Steve Witkoff spouting Russian talking points, which is very disturbing. And President Zelensky seems to be being forced into some sort of territorial concession, giving up territory that Russia has not won in the military conflict. How might this affect the U.S. reputation? Just wargame it for us or play it out.
Well, I think if we are seen as forcing that kind of a peace, if you want to call it that, on Ukraine, I think that'll be damaging to our reputation, particularly if it involves, as you said, the cessation of territory. The process you described is one also I think that's worth thinking about. I mean, each president has their own style, you see some things in this administration which are, I think, a continuity and also very different. One trend that we've seen over the last few decades is the concentration of power and foreign policy, national security decision-making within the White House. And I think that's reached new heights now. And the president is very much directing things. Presidents in the past have had people they rely on. President Kennedy used his brother to help solve the Cuban Missile Crisis. So, that's not necessarily completely new, but you do have these outside actors. What is new is that there is an absence of process, a rigorous process around it, and that results in things that, for example, you described in the case of Venezuela. Was there enough consideration to legal questions, not just international but domestic? What did the intelligence community think about various things? What did the intelligence community think would be the reaction of Ukraine to the 28-point plan?
And this is the kind of thing that you used to do at the NSC.
Yes.
You would corral all of these opinions and make sure the president was briefed.
Exactly. The job of the National Security Council staff was to present a wide range of fully vetted options to the president. The president would decide, and then you would oversee the implementation with the agencies. I witnessed, actually, cabinet secretaries going into the Oval Office, trying to do an end run on the process. And President Obama said, great idea, run it through the process now. Now, sometimes, yes, sometimes, that can be, you can have too much process.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example, I think, of where President Trump, through improvisational and style, where it's actually produced, I think, a quick and effective result. It's Syria, with the decision to lift sanctions on Syria. I think that was the right decision. And had that gone through a process, you may have ended up with something very different at the end of that. So there are pluses and minuses to it. I prefer some degree of process. I think there has to be a balance. But there should be also space for presidential initiative.
Well, I would like to warm up the audience, start thinking of your questions. I'm about to run the mics to you, but before we do that, Mr. Prime Minister, I would like to give you a phrase that apparently earlier in the dialogues the audience came up with to describe Trump, a transactional supremacist. Now, you were the prime minister who came in Guinea after the restoration of a government following a military coup. How do you unseat a transactional supremacist? How did you restore democracy?
It's difficult to build the link between the two questions. I don't know which one you want me to answer first, because you have two questions in one. I think number one, America first is a doctrine. You cannot deny that. And the doctrine where priority is America, more attention to internal opinion, relationship that used to be multilateral and rule-based and long-term becomes punctual and transactional. It is all about a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of business into it anyway. In each, we have seen in any of the agreements that have been so far developed, particularly in the African continent, there is a big element of business into it. So transactions. So therefore, I think this element of transactionalism cannot be denied in the process. It is fact-based. It's not something trying to speak behind or in front it. It is fact-based. So that's for that answer. So we have gone from multilateralism as it used to be to one-on-one type of first consequence, fragmentation for others, and transactions based. So I think that's the case. Now coming to the situation, I didn't capture completely. To the situation of Guinea, I didn't capture completely. Yes, I personally came in, was brought in on the basis of the usual rhetoric. When you have a coup, you are looking for someone who is apolitical, neutral, etc., etc. So,
and you'd been an assistant secretary general at the UN. You have a technocrat background and reputation.
Exactly. And if I tell you, I had never been a member of a party, and so therefore, that's why they brought me. Actually, they said this guy has no color, so let's bring him. So I came in. Of course, the first thing you try to do is because there is no constitution, it's abolished. There is no text, so you have to do something. So you try to write help to write a provisional constitution for the transitional period. So you have something that is rule-based. And so that's what we did, and that's what we tried to implement. And that's why in Guinea, actually, it went a little bit more smoothly, more quietly. As you see, we didn't embark in extremism positions. We tried to build an institution. It has its own problems, because, a soldier is a soldier. There is nothing you can, the DNA is there, so He has his own way of doing things, and that's remained. But at least we went in an orderly manner. We didn't respect our delays as we wanted, and we came to a point, and now we have a constitution, and now they are organizing the elections. And in that, parallelly in the process, and that's where the militaries were very smart. You know, anytime I was trying to tell them, let's do it slowly, particularly with the partners, they used to tell me, listen, if we militaries cannot do it by force now, you guys, when you come start negotiating, you will never come out of it. And one of the big results of that is we were able, and now they have completed the thing, I'm not there, but the process is continuing. We just completed the biggest investment of the century with the opening of what we call the Simandu project. It's the biggest iron ore project, $20 billion investment, decided in 2 years.
But of course...
And built, just to complete, built 650 kilometers of railway in 2.5 years, which you cannot see anywhere in Africa.
Yeah.
So you see, and so, yeah.
So what I'm seeing as a U.S. citizen is you went from an autocrat to a coup to quickly trying to win back the people's trust by putting in rule of law.
Yeah.
And then you followed that rule of law, and that stability brought in this massive investment or helped foster it.
Yeah. We tried to put rule of law. If I tell you we did 100%, is not true, okay? But we tried our best, and we were close to what is ordinary. And then what was most important, we respected all the pre-existing agreements that were signed. We came in and said, look, we will respect what our predecessors have signed. Government is a continuity, but let's discuss. There are things we have to change. We have to adjust for the interest of our people. And we want to facilitate investment. You remember, my country has 1/3 of the world aluminum. We have the highest deposit of iron ore is 65%. You take the earth, it's steel.
Wow.
Okay, so that's why I brought this $20 billion investment. And of course, everybody is rushing. Okay, and today, from this year, we are the first, I think we are going to become the first producers of bauxite, or that's mean aluminum, of the world. Okay, so in this position, of course, we have different context.
Well, what I'm hearing though overall is imposition of rule of law, which was the will of the people,
yes.
But also you put the country's resources at work for the people, and it sounds like you took your ego out of it, and that is that's a lesson. With that, I'd like to open it up to the audience, and I've had my back to this part of the audience, so I'd love to see if anyone has a question here. Okay, over here we'll take the two right next to each other, and please briefly introduce yourself, and if I may ask, make sure there's a question in your question.
There is a question.
Thank you.
Good morning. There is a question. My name is El Mustafa Ben Lamle, Moroccan, United Nations, former United Nations. The question is to U.S. Ambassador. Since 2016, if we want to summarize just the external relations, international relations of the states, it's the term withdrawal. Withdrawal from Paris, withdrawal from NATO, withdrawal from Afghanistan, withdrawal from United Nations. One of the first actions of the President Trump in 2016-17 was cutting the funding for Haiti, MINUSTA, by more than half. Okay, is this a long-term thinking? If this is a long-term thinking in the States, is there some serious thinking about the future? Is there a serious thinking about the alternative of the United Nations, to the United Nations, or to the system alive since 45? That's my question.
Okay.
Is it a word without order that the U.S. is seeking? Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next lady, and I just have to add, the U.S. did not withdraw from NATO. They've been harsh about it, but we're still in it. Ma'am.
Thank you, Mina Balyamun, Senior Fellow at the Policy Center for the New South here. My question is to His Excellency, the former ambassador, but anybody can respond to it because also I'm interested in your reaction to it. We tend to focus a lot on the current administration in the United States, but we forget about other important institutions that Americans vote for people to go and defend their rights. Where is Congress from all this? And where is the Supreme Court from all this? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, where are those checks and balances that we're supposed to check? The presidential power. One here. I'll take these two, and then we'll go to answers.
Do I have
Microphones, just a second.
Okay. No, you go first.
Okay.
Okay.
Trying to be a gentleman. Marcus Freitas, Senior Fellow at the Poly Center. My question to the panel is this. Trump has been considered in China the builder of the nation because all the measures that he takes has forced the Chinese to adapt, build new things. One of them is the chips, right? With the whole situation with NVIDIA, we are hearing that. So Trump is a temporary personage in history. But we do see that some of the things that he's doing will have long-lasting problems, like the action in Venezuela, the way he's handling the whole process of global governance. My question is just this. Are we losing the opportunity to build something new, G20 -1, understanding that it is an important player, but from time to time, it wants to isolate itself. That happened with the Clinton years. The U.S. became more isolationist. So that's my question. Thank you.
So, I mean, some could say that the resurgence of other nations at the UN is already
a consequence
using a current institution, but expressing it in a different way. Ma'am.
Thank you so very much. My name is Len Ishmael. I'm a senior fellow at the Policy Center, and of course, this is my colleague and gentleman. Just very quickly to say that I'd like to just pull the conversation back a little bit to what's happening off the coast of Venezuela, mainly for several reasons. One is the fact that Venezuela, of course, is a country that has been under sanctions for quite some time. 7.9 million people have been displaced from Venezuela, and they find home and shelter not only in South America and Latin America, but also the microstates of the Caribbean. Trinidad and Tobago shares an oil field on which its economy depends for natural gas and oil and its economic buoyancy. Indeed. With Venezuela. Okay? Yes. And what has happened right now is that the region has always prided itself on being a zone of peace. So it is immeasurably an anxious period for these microstates for two main reasons. One, we're coming out of COVID and all of the...
I'm sorry, what is your question? Because we have a very little bit of time left.
I'm coming to the question. We're coming out of COVID and periods of instability, and what this region really wanted was a period of stability and growth. What prospect is there, Ambassador, and this is to you, for regional conversation and dialogue to resolve the potential for even more escalated crisis in the Caribbean, which we really and truly cannot afford?
Well, thank you. And one might say that when you've got a big bully from the north with a bunch of warships there, that doesn't leave a lot of space for interregional dialogue. But did you want to take that one briefly? And then I want to hear your thoughts.
I'll try to connect some of these, or do you want the last one?
Let's do the last one first.
Okay.
I'll remind you of the others.
So on the region, I think what we saw in terms of, my honest opinion, is that regional dialogue it won't be in its traditional format. That there will be probably some degree of discussion with like-minded actors, but we don't know what's going to happen there in Venezuela either. We don't know what the administration is going to do. I would say that it's also not a resolved issue in the United States. There are a lot of people, including in the president's coalition, who are not crazy about the prospect of another regime change operation and what that might entail, and becoming responsible for the daily lives of another people. That's not a popular prospect in the United States, and much less the region. Now, so the OAS, traditional structures like that, what role will they play? Will they be asked to do something afterwards? I can't tell you. I can tell you what's interesting, and this maybe does link back, if you'd be okay with this, with the previous question on the role of the United Nations. The administration did actually go and have the peace plan for Gaza blessed by the Security Council after the fact. And so it's not as if the traditional institutions are being completely dismissed. And of course, here in Morocco, people are very familiar with a subsequent Security Council resolution on October 31st on the issue of the Sahara.
So, do you think this is an opportunity for interregional dialogue? Can the OAS do anything?
Opportunity, yes. Opportunity, yes. But they are going to do it. This is another thing. The polarization in the continent is very, very tough. And I don't see that they are going to sit all of them, because it has to be all of them. It's going to be bad for all the continent. But I don't see that which all the leaders in the region are going to sit down and talk about the situation.
So is this a matter of nobody wants Maduro to stay in power, except Cuba, perhaps, because they are so reliant on trade and oil deliveries. Therefore, the U.S. is doing them a favor. So no one's going to object to this stepping on to Latin American sovereignty?
No, perhaps it will be an objection. It's true. What we want is that Venezuelans could live in their country, Venezuelans could enjoy the place, but the situation is very difficult. So the regime, I don't know if it's going to happen something. But at the same time, we don't want to have a war. Because it's going to affect all of us,
especially Colombia.
This is the problem. But we would like that Venezuela will have peace back, for sure.
How about the larger question of the reestablishment of the Monroe Doctrine, as the Trump national security strategy described it, where they think it's their Latin Americans' business is the White House's business? Is that offensive?
I think it should be the both. I work in Miami, and I saw what it was the South Commander. And it was a time with the South Commander has a meeting with all the countries. Agree or disagree with the United States, but they were running. Now, there is not possible to do that. Because now it's the leadership who decide without necessarily listen. As ambassadors say, they have a team that give the advice what to do. But not necessarily they listen what is the advice. So for us, as the Prime Minister say, it's very important to keep having relation and important relation with the United States. But what is happening around Venezuela is affecting all of us.
Prime Minister, this idea of, is there an opportunity to build something new, especially with this new era of U.S. isolationism, as your former UN colleague described? I mean, does the UN, as opposed to tearing the UN down and creating something new, can the UN, with other nations stepping forward, become more representative of what the world wants as opposed to what the U.S. wants?
Well, it's a difficult question. But, what the new doctrine is saying, Trump doctrine is saying, they want burden sharing. Okay? Sharing. They say we don't want to do it alone. But then if you say burden sharing, it means also you have to accept some power sharing. Okay? And what does it mean? It means that we have to set the rules together. Number one, we have to manage our institutions together in a different way. And then we have to share the benefits. I think these are three principles that have to be there. If you say the responsibility is no more mine alone, we are doing it together, it's fine. then let's manage together and let's share the product together.
That does
So
not seem to be.
I think that should be the principle.
That it goes with America first.
Yeah, but that should be the principle, And I think with this fragmentation that is happening now, I think it is time that institutions, or let's say gathering like the Atlantic Dialogues, start thinking about it. Particularly, we are all, Latin America, Europe, United States, and Africa. These Atlantic shores. I think it is really an opportunity to start thinking about policy contributions better in that direction, and explanation. And I'm sure the facts will make things settle the way it should.
That one last question. Where is the opposition to America First? Where are the lawmakers? Where are the things that we're supposed to check President Trump's power?
Yeah. I don't pretend to be an expert on domestic politics, but I'll give it a shot. And I certainly have my own opinions. Our Constitution gives the upper hand to the presidency in matters of foreign affairs. It's the only place. In domestic affairs, the president is very much dependent, should be, on Congress. And so that's historically been the case. In fact, if you look back, including the war power, early in the early days of our republic, the president actually was merely somebody who carried out a decision by Congress. Congress made the decision whether or not there would be military intervention. We've certainly come a long way from that. But I would say today there are people who are speaking up. The Democratic Party is in the minority, so those voices are obviously going to be less heard. The House of Representatives was out of session for much of this year. And so I don't think Congress is stepping up historically as it should. I'll give you an example of, in a bipartisan way, something that I was involved in as a staff member on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in the lead up to the Iraq War, where we worked in a very bipartisan way to try to do our best to get the facts before the American people, before that consequential decision was made. And we had a set of hearings, and we didn't call it the day after, we called it the decade after. And perhaps that was even an underestimate at that time. But that's an example of where Congress can, in a not polemical way, but in a serious way, present alternatives in a patriotic way, say maybe we should do this a different way, maybe there's room for dialogue, collaboration, where are the regional organizations, where's the UN, where's the legitimacy. And there's a well-known, maybe not in this room, but a senator Republican senator from Michigan, the late Senator Vandenberg, and he had a saying. He said, if you want me in on the crash landing, you better have me in on the takeoff. So if there's a crash landing, that's the flip side of this. If something goes wrong, who's going to be there with you if they're not there on the takeoff? Yeah. And I think the Supreme Court, sadly, my view, is not fulfilling its role and seems to have a theory, which I very much disagree with, of a largely unchecked executive. Yeah. And that goes across the board. I think there are roles. One thing the Supreme Court has always been hesitant to do is to step in when there are disputes between the executive and the legislative, particularly on matters of war, the war power, and foreign affairs.
So I have two things to add to that. Everything that the Supreme Court has given to President Trump, it is also giving in terms of power to any future Democratic president. So let's see how that works out. And we've got midterms coming up next year, which is when the American people may tell us what they think of the Trump administration by their voting. We only have
1 minute.
Minute 40 or so left, so I'm going to give everybody 30 seconds to answer my final question. Will the world be worse or better off because of America First? thus far?
Again, I have to look at this from my southern shores, okay?
Yeah.
I think the world will be better.
Better because?
Better because simply it was a wake-up call. It was a wake-up call. We are going to, but because before it becomes better, it will be worse. Of course, I have to say that. Because we'll go through a crisis, we'll go through adjustment,
Okay.
we'll go through discussions. You know, a lot of thinking is going on. You know, Professor Masood and some people last week already set up a new secretariat to think about the future of development cooperation. Okay, and these things are mushrooming. So
Got it.
people didn't give up. They
Okay.
are moving, they are preparing, and I think there will be a better future.
Positive, Ambassador.
I am positive like him. I'm going to say in Spanish the last word. Las regiones han madurado, han surgido nuevas coaliciones.
So countries like Morocco and Portugal have shown and proved that multilateralism is not a priority that has a huge potential, but a shared responsibility, which means that
It's a shared responsibility for all. That is what America First is leaving behind. And last, to my fellow American on this panel, what do you think? Do you think Americans are learning from this?
I'm an optimist, and I think all of us here are, and so I agree with my panelists. Yes, we'll be better off. And there's, if you'll indulge me, I think there's a saying attributed to Winston Churchill that the Americans always do the right thing after trying everything else. And one last quote, if you will, indulge me on this. Not many people know that Morocco was the first country to recognize the United States. And there's a lot of discussion in American First and the concept of self-interest we talked about. Yeah. I would add the word enlightened before the self-interest. And I'll tell you what enlightened self-interest is. This is a letter that I carried around in my breast pocket. I still do when I was here. It's from a letter that President Washington wrote to an ancestor of the current king, King Sultan Muhammad III at that time. And he says and Morocco made that decision, I should say, to recognize the United States when we were not a superpower. We had just fought a revolutionary war. And this is what President Washington wrote. He said, "This young nation," speaking of the US, "just recovering from the waste and desolation of a long war, have not as yet had time to acquire riches by agriculture and commerce, but our soil is bountiful and our people industrious, and we have reason to flatter ourselves that we shall gradually become useful to our friends." And I think that's what we'll be. We'll be useful to our friends.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much. Thank you to my panelists, and thank you to the Policy Center. On with the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Panelists are asked to remain on stage for a group photo. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. The next session will now begin. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. The next session will now begin.